In the aftermath of not one, but two incidents in which Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito flew flags at his multiple homes that appeared to be in solidarity with the insurrectionists on January 6, Senators Durbin and Whitehouse called for Alito's recusal from the case currently being considered regarding Trump, as well as any other cases related to the 2020 election or January 6th's insurrection. Alito has now responded to those calls for recusal in a letter to Durbin and Whitehouse. He wrote, quote, "This is in response to your letter of May 23rd to the Chief Justice requesting that he take steps to ensure that I recuse in Trump versus United States and any other cases related to the 2020 presidential election or the January 6th attack on the Capitol. As the court has pointed out, individual justices, rather than the court, decide recusal issues. I am therefore responding directly to your letter. In it, you claim that two incidents involving the flying of flags created an appearance of impropriety that requires my recusal. The applicable provision of our Code of Conduct states as follows. A justice is presumed impartial and has an obligation to sit unless disqualified. A justice should disqualify himself or herself in proceedings in which the justice's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, that is, where an unbiased and reasonable person who is aware of all relevant circumstances would doubt that the justice could fairly discharge his or her duties. The two incidences you cite do not meet the conditions for recusal set out, and I therefore have an obligation to sit under the disqualification provision," meaning that no, Alito will not be recusing himself. He would then go on to try and absolve himself of any and all responsibility for the appearance of gross impropriety by flying two separate flags at two separate homes by diffusing any and all responsibility onto his wife. For example, he wrote regarding the upside-down American flag, "I was not even aware of the upside-down flag until it was called to my attention. As soon as I saw it, I asked my wife to take it down, but for several days she refused. My wife and I own our Virginia home jointly. She therefore has the legal right to use the property as she sees fit, and there were no additional steps I could have taken to have the flag taken down more promptly." And regarding the Appeal to Heaven flag, quote, "I recall that my wife did fly that flag for some period of time, but I do not remember how long it flew, and what is most relevant here, I had no involvement in the decision to fly that flag. My wife is fond of flying flags, I am not. My wife was solely responsible for having flagpoles put up at our residence and our vacation home, and has flown a wide variety of flags over the years." I gotta say, at first I thought that blaming your wife was just something that Ted Cruz did to avoid taking responsibility for flying off to Cancun while his state was in the midst of a freeze, but now I see that it's a movement-wide principle. You see, conservative men are never to blame, it is always the fault of the wives. Guess that's what they meant by family values all this time. Throw the wife under the bus to protect the husband. Got it. I should also note, for posterity, that the entire excuse put forward by Alito is complete BS. While Alito claims the flag was flipped upside down by his wife in response to a neighbor's vulgar insult, police call records indicate that the actual incident took place weeks after the inverted flag had already been taken down. So unless Martha Ann Alito is also doing time travel, the excuse put forward by these hacks is an outright lie. And so now, the reality is that absent any legitimate oversight mechanism for the Supreme Court, Samuel Alito, along with Clarence Thomas, by the way, another justice whose wife was involved in efforts to overturn the 2020 election, will litigate a case, at least one, directly related to that activity. Samuel Alito has quite literally aligned himself with the insurrectionists, while the Supreme Court is currently sitting on a case that would determine whether or not Donald Trump enjoys presidential immunity in a case directly related to that very insurrection. At this point, there is no difference between the QAnon shaman presiding over this case and Samuel Alito because, frankly, both of them have displayed support for the insurrection. And that's a point that MSNBC's Chris Hayes made as well. Quote, "Here's the stark truth. Alito could show up to the next oral argument with a MAGA face tattoo and you wouldn't be able to impeach and remove him. He could make a $200,000 contribution to Trump's super PAC. In a literal sense right now, there's simply no tangible boundary other than social sanction, personal reputation, pressure from other justices, etc. But short of committing prosecutable crimes, and even that, who knows, he can do whatever he wants." Which raises the question, what should we be doing about it? Here's what AOC had to say on that point.
What do you see as your role as a Democratic member of Congress in a Democratic House majority with respect to this court, specifically Alito and more broadly?
Well, I mean, I don't even think that we have to wait until we have a Democratic House majority because we have a Democratic Senate majority. And this is an alarm that I've been sounding for quite some time now. I think that what we are seeing here is an extraordinary breach of not just the trust and the stature of the Supreme Court, but we are seeing a fundamental challenge to our democracy. Samuel Alito has identified himself with the same people who raided the Capitol on January 6th and is now going to be presiding over court cases that have deep implications over the participants of that rally. And while this is the threat to our democracy, Democrats have a responsibility for defending our democracy. And in the Senate, we have gavels. There should be subpoenas going out. There should be active investigations that are happening. And I believe that when House Democrats take the majority, we are preparing and ensuring to support the broader effort to stand up our democracy. But I also believe that when Democrats have power, we have to use it. We cannot be in perpetual campaign mode. We need to be in governance mode. We need to be in accountability mode with every lever that we have. Because we cannot take a Senate majority for granted, a House majority for granted, or a White House for granted. Every single minute matters, and we have to use our power when we have it.
And here's the honest truth. Will we be able to impeach and remove Clarence Thomas or Samuel Alito because of their actions as they relate to January 6th? Not right now. We don't have the numbers in the House, and with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, we also don't have the numbers in the Senate. And so it would be a fool's errand to engage in the doomed effort that is an impeachment effort. But that's not to say that these people get to escape accountability. We have sat through a 15-month investigation based on quite literally nothing against Joe and Hunter Biden. And that was with zero evidence. But what it bought the Republicans was news cycles and attention and owning the narrative. We have Senate majorities right now. We should be doing our own investigations, only for something that actually has merit. We should highlight the wrongs that have been committed in the same way that the January 6th committee engaged in a fact-finding mission and uncovered information that not only was sure to help prosecutors, but more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, inform the public. Republicans, for their part, rely heavily on operating without scrutiny to get away with their behavior. The more people that know the extent to which the conservative justices on this court are compromised, the more pressure there will be to rectify what is so obviously wrong. And I have one last note that I think is worth bringing up, and I've made this point before, and I'll continue to make it again. Clarence Thomas is 75 years old. Samuel Alito is 74, John Roberts is 70, Sonia Sotomayor is 69. If Donald Trump wins in November, he is virtually guaranteed to appoint replacements for 2 of these justices, if not more. Meaning that on the ballot this November is the Supreme Court majority for virtually the rest of our lives. And look, I understand that for many people, Joe Biden may not be your first choice. I understand that a lot of people are unhappy with how he's dealt with Israel and Gaza. I understand that a lot of people are unhappy about the cost of groceries and housing. I understand that a lot of people are unhappy about his age. Everybody is 100% entitled to their qualms about how he's presided. That's your prerogative. But let's be clear here. The alternative, Donald Trump, would mean the court is untouchable for decades. And that'll have massive implication for abortion and contraception protections, for fair maps, for gerrymandering, for the Voting Rights Act, for Donald Trump's own prosecutions and this insane notion of presidential immunity, and for democracy as a whole. Joe Biden may not be perfect, but we are kidding ourselves if we are not recognizing what's at stake if Trump manages to win in November. The court will be the least of our problems, but it will be a massive problem and will plague us for the rest of our lives. So I understand that a lot of people want to use their vote to punish Joe Biden, but we're not just voting on what's happened in the past, we're voting on what kind of a country we want to live in the future. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.